Sup nerds, today we're going to be talking about this, the Trimui Smart Pro. But before we get into that, I did want to give a sort of a life update kind of deal. Recently, I did win a giveaway for this guy, which is the RG556. And what a beast of a handheld it is, or was. Because I got to test it for 3 days. It was fantastic. Everything was working fine. You can see it even has the silicone case on it. It was really awesome. This was my very first Android handheld. And if you have watched a few of my videos, you know that I have been wanting an Android handheld for a long time. So this was fantastic. I fell in love with this. And then 3 days later, it got into a boot loop. And it wouldn't work anymore. It just got stuck in a loop while trying to reboot itself every time on its own. And I did everything that I could try on it, like reflashing the original firmware on it, even trying Gamma OS when it didn't work, and none of that worked. I was talking to a bunch of people in several different handheld groups, and they did tell me that they think it's probably the boot chip that is broken. While that was going on, I was talking to Ambernick as well, and they pretty much said the same thing. They did say that the motherboard was probably gone bad. But the bad thing is that because I won it on a giveaway and I hadn't bought it myself, it wasn't under warranty. So they said I would have to actually buy the motherboard separately and then put it on myself. That said, the motherboard was like $85 plus $15 for shipping. So that's like $100 without counting the importation taxes that Brazil would put on it. And at the moment, that is not the kind of money I can spend in one go. Maybe in the future, but for now, this thing will remain without getting fixed, which is a tragedy because like I said, look at this. I got this for free and I was so excited to show you guys everything that this baby could do, from GameCube to PS2 to even some PS3 titles. And I was getting into Win later and it was so good, so good. I love this baby so much. And yeah, tragedy struck, but that is life, right? It is what it is. It's sad. But my friend heard me complaining about that, and she was kind enough to lend me one of her handhelds for me to make a video on. Of course, I will have to give it back to her. But it is the Trimui Smart Pro. Of course, vastly different handhelds, doesn't compare. But you know, it is still a pretty fun one, and one that I hadn't shown on this channel yet. And as you can see, she did put some caps on it and a silicone case on it as well, which is pretty cool. This was her Switch Lite as well, and I do love the aesthetics of it. I do think it's very cute. Pink is not my favorite color though. I do prefer yellow, but still I don't think it looks bad. I do think it looks pretty good, pretty fantastic. And just for you to see the size comparison to a Switch Lite, you can see that the screen size is fairly similar, slightly smaller. The Trimui Smart Pro is definitely more of a size of a PS Vita. You see the caps too. It is exactly the same as the analog sticks of a PS Vita. And because of that, it doesn't click either, so it doesn't have L3, R3. Even this thumb cap is a PS Vita thumb cap, and it fits perfectly because it is that same size. He has a decent D-pad here, it's not the best. It's clicky more than mushy. I do think I prefer the Vita D-pad compared to this, but you know, it's functional, I guess. The face buttons are also pretty clicky. I don't know if you can hear it. All pretty clicky buttons. The two analogs, of course. Because they're Vita sticks, there's not a lot of travel here. So, you know, some people like that, some people don't. It is what it is. There is a Trimui button here, which opens menus. There's a start and select buttons here. I think keeps unfocusing, but yeah, there is two speaker grills on the front and a LED light here to show when it is charging. Up here, there is a power button here and a volume rocker. This is for file transferring, I think. It says host, but I think it is for file transferring. And as you can see, there are L and R and L2 and R2. All of these buttons are clicky. This isn't really a trigger. This is just a clicky button on the shape of a trigger. But you know, it works. Why not? There's not a lot of games that will be using actual trigger functions that this thing can run. On the sides, there's nothing really. It does have the little keychain thingy that you can put on there, which sure, why not? On the bottom, it is a little bit more interesting. There is the USB-C charging port. There is a microphone hole, a headphone jack, the micro SD slot. There is also this switch, which you can configure to a few different functions inside, as I will show you later. Now, there is this thing here. I don't know if you can see it, but it just says Trimui Smart Pro on it. And it is nothing. It is just a cap. But if you take a close look at it, it is the exact size that it would be for a full-size HDMI port, which makes you wonder if that's what they had planned. And then they changed their minds, so they plugged it up with this gray cap on there. It would have been fantastic if this had a full-size HDMI port. I would love to play this on a bigger screen with that. But as of this moment, it doesn't really have anything that can do video out, even though it has two USB-C ports. One is just for file transfer and the other is just for charging. None of them has video out. And then behind here, despite the silicone case having these holes, without the case, it's just a flat plastic surface without any texture to it and no ventilation holes, which is pretty interesting. And just as with most Linux-based handhelds, this doesn't have an active fan, but it is what it is. Now let's talk about the internals. I will leave the specs over here. And spec-wise, it is very similar to the Anbernic XX series, but the chipset of this is slightly better. But it does have the same amount of RAM. And as you saw, it did have CrossMix on there. It isn't the newest version of CrossMix because my friend doesn't play too much on this. And the whole reason that she let me borrow it is because she wasn't playing much on it. Oh, and just as a side note, she did get this at around September of 2024. And it was on sale back then and she got it for around $35. Which honestly, for $35, I do think this is a fantastic device. I think I had paid around $32 for my XXSP as well. And compared to that, this one is a much better device in my point of view. Has a much better screen, has two analogs, and of course, a better CPU to be able to play PSP games better. And just of course, the form factor is also much better for PSP. But I won't be able to tell you what the original firmware was like because I never came into contact with it. But here on the apps, you can see there is Moonlight for streaming, media player, USB storage is to connect by USB here. There's a music player, file manager, RetroArch, all that is here. But what we do want to see first is the FN key, this function here. And as you can see, I did put it to LED off, but there is also quiet mode, silent mode, CPU power save, CPU performance mode. So I did put the performance mode and the LED off at the same time so that I know that when it is off, it is on performance mode. Turbo A, Turbo B, there's all these different things that you can do with it, but the more interesting is, of course, the performance mode for CPU. And I'm not sure, the few times that I did try to see this, we didn't see much of a difference. You can run a lot of different platforms on it, as you can see. At this point in time, any emulation handheld that you get will run up to GBA pretty well. Even the Miu A30 that we did show, which was the cheapest device that we have showed in this channel, it could run on 2GBA fantastically well. So that is no secret there. But above that is when things started to get a little bit harder for some of the devices. N64 was definitely one of the ones that the Miu A30 had some trouble with. And even XXSP had a few little snags depending on the game. We can try one of the games here. And because this is a bigger screen, it does put these little spacings on the side, which is okay, not too bad. And I don't know if you can hear, but Cruis'n USA is lagging on this one as well, so. Oh. Okay, so I did check the Miu A30 video, which is where we tried this game before. but it actually runs better on that. So it could be just a software thing maybe, but the sound was messed up over there as well, and the frame rate was a bit low, but still playable. And we did finish a race over there, whereas here we can't finish because it goes down to 2 FPS, and that is unplayable. Yeah, so that Trimui button does open up the emulation menu. So let's turn this on and see the lights already turned off. Supposedly this is in performance mode. So let's try to see how Cruis'n USA goes with the performance mode on to see if it's any different. It is still laggy. It is still very laggy, almost unplayable, so I'm not sure anything changed. So yeah, a lot of people do say that you have to play things on performance mode and whatnot, but as you can see, there's it went back to 2 again. I don't think there is any difference, or maybe I'm using this wrong, but as far as I know, I don't think there's any difference in using that. Cruis'n the World, you can see it runs very smoothly here, but I mean, it is a much lighter game than Cruis'n USA. And I guess I didn't try Cruis'n the World with the XXSP, so I don't know if this is better or not. But as far as Cruis'n USA go, similar performance. So you can see that N64, it is still a hit or miss, but that is the case with every single Linux-based handhelds. Some of them are good, some of them are not. Cruis'n USA was notoriously difficult to emulate, so you can see here that it is still the case. PlayStation, most things should work, as the emulation for PlayStation was a lot more advanced than the N64 one. We don't think there will be any issues there. The Dreamcast worked okay on the XXSP, but not well at all on the Mii UA30. We can try so Calibur, I guess. Here, the performance does seem to be similar to that of the XXSP, so pretty smooth. For this device, at least in my point of view, what is most attractive is the PSP games, mostly because of the form factor. It does have a 16:9 aspect ratio here. That said, this too won't run all of the PSP games perfectly. It does run a lot of them really well, but there are a few that will be too heavy, one of them being Test Drive Unlimited. I did try it on here and it wasn't that great. I think I deleted it even now, but yeah, it was a game that it didn't run well at all. So not every PSP game will work. A lot of them will work well even at 2x resolution. And if you go in settings here, yeah, I do have the rendering resolution at 2x. Yeah, you can see the ones that I tried to play. Test Drive Unlimited did not work well at all, which is sad but also understandable because this was super ambitious game. Even on the actual PSP, like the full speed that it was running at, it wasn't too awesome. But you know, it is what it is. Some of the blacklist cars were also different, which is kind of interesting. Let's put the sound down a little, just because a lot of this music is copyrighted. Pretty fun game. You know me, I do like racing games. Let's take a look at the Portmaster stuff, right? And because this has analog, it can play shooters better. It can play things like Fallout 1, which uses the mouse, and you can use it on the analog here, which the XXSP you couldn't. You had to switch the controls to use the D-pad, and then it wouldn't work very well. But here with the analog sticks, it does work pretty well. Even Grand Theft Auto, if you see here, it is a little awkward still, but you know, it is what it is. Yeah, I don't know. It is a little clunky, but you know, it works. This is Half-Life. You can see it runs pretty well. I mean, this is a really old game, used to run on Windows 98 and stuff. So it is it's no surprise that it does work well in even in handhelds like this. But you know, you can see it is pretty smooth. Even looking around, I do think that is fantastic. Such a fantastic port. Another cool thing I wanted to show you is, of course, Stardew Valley. But as you can see, I did enter co-op there. And if you see here on my XXSP, this is on the bigger house. And you can see You can see, right? Yeah, so you can see that it moves. It's kind of tough to show with me doing all this. But yeah, it's connected. Even this being an Ambernick and this being a Trimui Smart Pro, if you have a friend with a handheld that can run Portmaster, and you do too, then hey, you can co-op Stardew together, which it's fantastic in my point of view. Just having Stardew Valley in the palm of your hands is already fantastic. When they're playing together with your friend, this is amazing. I do think this is so cool, super crazy cool. And that is one of the reasons I do love Portmaster games. Of course, not all of them will have working co-op, but at least for Stardew Valley itself is just really fantastic. And yeah, I guess I didn't go too much over its insides, but it is a Linux-based handheld, so it will be similar to all of the other ones that I did show that are Linux-based, which is practically all of them, because the one Android handheld that I have, like I showed you in the beginning, is not working. Hopefully one day I will be able to replace the motherboard for that or get a different Android handheld. But for now, Linux ones are what I have. And out of the Linux ones, I do think Trimui Smart Pro is one of the better choices, one of the more fantastic ones. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do love my XSSP. I do carry this one around a lot more still just because it is more pocketable. I do like that quite a bit. But to play at home, I do find myself, in these few days that I tested this out, I did find this a lot more comfortable. Of course, the screen is much bigger. It has stacked shoulder buttons, which is fantastic as compared to something like this. So I do think this is really good, especially if you do like PSP titles like I mentioned, and there are a lot of great PSP games. So yeah, if that is your focus, I do think this is the top pick that you can get. Of course, out of the Linux-based handhelds, the Android ones will be much better than all of these in every aspect, but for the Linux ones, I do think that Trimui Smart Pro does take the price here. Of course, Ambernick does also have the 40xx and whatnot, but if the performance of that is the same as this, which, should be, because all of the XX have the same innards, then I do think that the Trimui Smart Pro is still better performance-wise. But then, of course, this one doesn't have a video out, whereas Ambernick XX series do. So, it all depends on personal preference, I guess. But as for game performance, I do think the Trimui Smart Pro is still slightly better. And yeah, that is what I had to say and show about this little guy. I did have a lot of fun playing around with this to make this video. I would be sad to see this go, to return this to my friend. But messing around with this did definitely make me want to have another device that had sticks on it, which I didn't think I was gonna miss it that much, just because I do mostly play Game Boy Advance and Super Nintendo and PlayStation 1. But playing some PSP on this did definitely make me want to maybe get another handheld at some point. But yeah, that's it. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to see more videos like this, and of course, always nerd on.